Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today. Hope you're having an amazing day. In this episode, we're coming back with the follow-up to the case against Ryan Duke. You see, Ryan Duke was on trial for the murder of Faye Grinstead. I'm going to share with you what has come about out of this case. Let's go ahead and dive right into it, why don't we? So Ryan Duke, acquitted of murdering beauty queen and history teacher Faye Grinstead. If you watched my recent video, I talked about everything that led up to the Ryan Duke case. You see, Ryan Duke, this whole thing got started after a few tips that led the police to Ryan Duke. Ryan Duke confessed to the crime. Weird, right? And now he's acquitted of murdering Faye Grinstead. The jury in this case have acquitted Ryan Duke of murdering 30-year-old teacher and beauty queen Faye Grinstead. Ryan Duke, he was only convicted of concealing a death of another for keeping Grinstead's whereabouts in this 2005 incident a secret. Prosecutors, they said Duke was Grinstead's killer and that he took her life when she found him burglarizing her home. But Duke, again, who initially confessed to investigators, said it was actually his friend Bo Dukes, no relation, that actually committed the murder. He testified in his own self-defense in this case that he was living with Bo in 2005, and Bo recruited him early October 23rd, 2005 to burn Grinstead's body. Ryan said, "I think he's screwing with me. I think this is a joke." And he was thinking about this before he actually saw her remains. But there was a body. You see, Bo Dukes at one point, FONDLED, the remains of Faye Grinstead. Definitely don't want to pronounce that, but you get what I'm saying. But this is according to Ryan Duke, that Bo Dukes at one point, FONDLED, the remains of Faye Grinstead. That is sick as can be. We don't know who's telling the truth. The jury believes Ryan Duke did not kill Faye Grinstead. And Ryan says, "I remember telling him to stop, and I remember how he looked at me. It was like I had never seen him before." And when asked how Bo looked, Ryan said he couldn't articulate it. "I don't have the words to describe it." Ryan Duke said he initially confessed under investigation in 2017 because he did not think Bo was going to confess. He described himself as experiencing long-term prolific substance abuse at this time. He had taken morphine, Percocet, probably a couple of Vicodin. That's what he said. And he said he had marijuana before meeting authorities because he knew he was not coming home. Ryan described an intertwined but fraught relationship between him and Bo Dukes. Again, no relation. Bo's last name has an S at the end. Ryan's last name does not have an S at the end. Duke, Ryan Duke, Bo Dukes. And Ryan said they started hanging out in his senior year of high school. They both went to the same high school that Faye Grinstead taught at. He said he did not think that Bo had a good reputation among their friends, causing scenes to make other people uncomfortable. And he said Bo was not considered trustworthy. Nonetheless, they eventually moved in together with Ryan's brother. Again, there were signs of trouble. Bo not contributing financially. Ryan Duke said that he kept secret the truth of Grinstead's death all these years because he was afraid of what Bo might do. Now, prosecutor J.D. Hart challenged him during cross-examination on how he construed his relationship with Bo. J.D. Hart, she described them as formally joined at the hip. And Ryan admitted that he was Bo's friend, but he disputed her use of the phrase best friends. He voiced doubt that Bo was ever his friend. Now, as for Bo Dukes, when he was called up to the witness stand in this case against Ryan Duke, he did not speak on his behalf when the defense called him up to testify. He repeatedly invoked his Fifth Amendment right after self-incrimination when Ryan's attorney, Ashley Merchant, requested his name, asked how he got to court, and showed him an exhibit. He said, on the advice of counsel, I'll be invoking my right not to provide testimony.
Will you state your name for the record?
On the advice of counsel, I'll be invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to provide testimony.
How'd you get here today?
On the advice of counsel, I'll be invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to provide testimony today.
Judge, may I introduce Defendant's Exhibit 4? I've already shown it to the state. It's a certified copy of his conviction in the United States District Court, the federal court for conspiracy.
Yes. Are you
only under our prior objection, Your Honor.
All right. Sure, that'd be fine.
Judge,
he's already serving a 25-year prison sentence just in connection to burning Grinstead's body. Now, contrary to Ryan's story and the jury's new verdict, prosecutors treated him as only the accomplice to Ryan Duke, not the actual killer. You know what makes this even all so much more sad? Ryan Duke or Bo Dukes, one of these two, killed Tara Grinstead. Ryan Duke, he's only charged with concealing a death. Bo Dukes is in there as an accomplice. He's spending up to 25 years of his life. He's serving a 25-year sentence only in connection with burning her body. Now, contrary to Ryan's story and the jury's new verdict, again, prosecutors only treated Bo as an accomplice, not the killer. And this is sad because there is no justice for Tara. Sure, one person is spending 25 years. If he is truly the killer, he deserves more than 25 years. Why would he plead the fifth? That's my question. You know, and if you think about it, they disposed of her body on Bo's family's property. Now, this does lean a little more towards Bo than it does Ryan. Because if Ryan killed her and then asked Bo to help dispose of the body, which is Bo's story, you know, why would Bo want to put her on his land, right? If someone else killed her. So that could definitely lead more to Bo as the killer because it is on his family property. Now, I'm guessing this was less about robbery as the prosecutors, as they were saying this, that this was more they were going to rob her, you know. And what makes this thing sucky is that Bo, assuming the jury got this right, that Ryan Dukes is not the killer, it seemed like Bo, knowing Ryan Duke, that Ryan Duke had these tendencies to black out, and it was an easy way to convince Ryan that he killed Tara when it was Bo all along. So maybe for a second Ryan Duke really believed maybe he did kill her, and then he confessed to it. And as I mentioned in the previous video, while he was on bail, Bo Dukes, while he was on bail after being charged with this crime, he was out on jail. In that process, he tried to hurt 2 more women. Then there was a warrant out. He was a wanted man. They found him like 3 days later. That too doesn't look good for Bo Dukes overall. Now again, he's only charged with concealing her death and 2 counts for lying to the police. But he may have known a lot more and was kind of getting away from it so he didn't have to spend the rest of his life in prison. And he'll never be charged with this murder. Because number one, he pleaded the Fifth Amendment. When he got up on the witness stand, he didn't have much to say. He did not want to incriminate himself. When someone pleads the Fifth Amendment, they're doing that so that they do not incriminate themselves and add more charges to themselves as well. He already knew he's getting off light because if he did kill her and he's only getting 25 years for everything, why would he confess? Granted, 25 years is a long time. You're gonna lose a big part of your life, but better than not ever seeing the light of day again, right? So Bo Dukes must have really had a great master plan. And truth is, from what I'm gathering, the jury got it right and Ryan Duke is not the killer. Good job. Good job. The last thing I want is someone to spend the rest of their life in prison for something they truly didn't do. Now, he did admit he played a little role in this when it came to hiding her body. He deserves to pay for that. You're talking about over 11 years before they would start getting some answers. And truth is, this is still not solved. And that, to me, is a tragedy. That means there is no justice for Tara. The person who murdered her will not be charged for her murder. You know, and as I mentioned in my previous video about the Tara Grinstead case, at first, Ryan Duke had a public defender, and then I believe the judge took the public defender off the case, lacking faith that they can handle this. When Ryan Duke no longer had the public defender and Ashley Merchant took over with her husband, one of the things that she said when she took over was, "We believe Ryan is innocent." She said that, and that was why they took it over. And guess what? This is a big win for the defense team because he was acquitted of the murder charges. That's a big deal if you really stop and think about it. And here's the thing, Ryan Duke, he's already served 5 years already. So we don't know what his sentence will be, but he may be a free man in less than 10 more years. I bet you he's a free man in less than 10 years, maybe even 5 more years. Because if they give him, say, 10 years, he's already served 5, he's a free man in 5 more years. Now, Bo, as I mentioned, while he was on bond for Tara Grinstead, and then he had this another case that was going against him on the 2 ladies that he had at his home that he tried to sexually assault with a knife and held them against their will. First, they went there willingly, but that's still unsure. But so he'll be facing the crime for Tara Grinstead, but he'll also have that crime against him as well, which should add on to what he's already facing. So technically speaking, he won't be seeing the light of day for a very long time after he is found, whatever, most likely guilty on that, because he was a wanted man. They had enough proof. And I told you about the family statement. They were kind of relieved that he was behind bars and he wasn't going to hurt anybody. That says a lot about who this Bo Dukes is. And as this trial was getting deeper and deeper, you can tell a lot of people started believing it was Bo Dukes and not Ryan Duke who killed Tara Grinstead. You know, and it's like, you know that false confessions exist. And when Ryan Duke confessed to this, it's hard when you hear someone confess, it's hard to believe different. Because he confessed to murdering her. But when you're under a bunch of drugs, there's probably a good chance it makes you say things that are false. And wow, you must have a great defense team that gets you out of this. I mean, because even though he did confess, they also had evidence placing him at the scene. And which is interesting because he actually confessed with evidence and he's getting away with it. And they found a glove at the crime scene. And this glove, it really could not be proven to have been involved with the crime, even though it was there. It did have skin cell DNA, but it didn't have any blood. And that's the other thing too. They had no evidence placing Ryan Duke at her home or even in her car or anything like that. So really hard to lead to prosecution against Ryan Duke. And Bo Dukes, Ryan Duke, none of them deny with being involved with transporting and burning her body. They both admit to that. And so he was, of the 6 counts he was facing, malice murder, count 1, not guilty. Count 2, felony murder, not guilty. Count 3, murder, not guilty. Count 4, aggravated assault, not guilty. Count 5, burglary, not guilty. Count 6, concealing the death of another, guilty. That's all he was convicted of. And so here's a little update on the day by day in court. Day 1 started. The trial for the man accused of killing Tara Grinstead got off to a quick start on May 9th. The state and Duke's attorney delivered their opening statement, giving a glimpse on how each side would present and argue the case. Their arguments focused on the February 2017 confession from Ryan Duke. The GBI says Duke confessed spontaneously and unsolicited to investigators that he killed Grinstead. The prosecution, they said that he confessed to the murder in more than one way. In his interview with agents, by physically writing out in detail what he says he did to murder her. And he also had what the prosecution called guilty knowledge. Now, the defense side that said the confession was false, and though Duke repeatedly confessed, his attorney said he was under the influence of narcotic pain medicine. They said that he also falsely confessed because he feared Bo Dukes, who was Ryan's former friend and roommate, who the defense implied is the one responsible. Aside from the confession, jurors also heard about the glove, which the state said is the vital piece of evidence found in Grinstead's front yard. The GBI did say that the glove contains DNA from 2 people on it, Grinstead and Ryan Duke. Day 2, jurors heard from the first investigators at Grinstead's home after she didn't show up to work on Monday in October 2005. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from court was the evidence found at her home back in 2005, or rather the evidence investigators couldn't find. GBI Special Agent Jeff Rosler and Ocilla Police Officer Bill Bars, they said that they looked at all the doors and windows in her home on the day she was reported missing. There were no signs of forced entry. Investigators also testified that friends of Grinstead were in and out of the home while officers were working the scene. But there was no evidence the crime scene had been cleaned. GBI agent Franklin Weathersby, he testified that he collected 117 swabs from Grinstead's car in December 2005. This was nearly 2 months after she vanished. The problem was that the car sat unsupervised at her home for at least part of the time. And investigators said that they did not know who had been in or out of the car. Her next door neighbor had her car detailed sometime after she disappeared, making it difficult for investigators to collect anything. Now, why would a neighbor do that? Day 3, bombshell information rocks the courthouse as most of the day's testimony came from retired Special Agent Gary Rothwell. He said media attention made it difficult to investigate Grinstead's appearance. He also detailed how evidence collected at her home was transported to the crime lab. He also admitted that Ryan Duke and Bo Duke's name had come up in the investigation more than a decade ago, but agents didn't follow up, assuming Ocilla Police had cleared them. Day 4, testimony focused on the confession video from 2017, where Duke confessed to investigators he killed Grinstead. And so the courtroom spent the morning watching his taped confession and then watched videos of Duke trying to show investigators where he claimed to have burned Grinstead's body. And after viewing the videos, the prosecution and defense questioned GBI agent Jason Shodell about what state Duke was in at the time of the confession. Day 5, short day in court. The state called 3 evidence analysts to testify. Now, day 6, defense attorneys questioned prosecution witnesses on whether there was any forensic evidence tying Duke to Tara Grinstead's murder. A forensic specialist testified DNA recovered from bone fragments at a pecan grove in Ben Hill County was inconclusive, meaning prosecutors could not confirm it was Grinstead's remains. The state rested its case. Now, it's hard to not believe that this is Grinstead's remains, considering that they both were able to point to this pecan grove in Ben Hill County. They were able to direct police right to it, to where they said they buried Grinstead's body. So I don't know how much more proof you need other than they both said it was going to be over there. Duke's defense team said none of the evidence presented proved Grinstead died of a homicide. So the defense asked the judge for a directed verdict. It was overruled and the defense began presenting case. Day 7, Ryan Duke takes the stand in his own defense and told the courtroom a different story than what he told investigators back in the 2017 confession. He said back in 2005 that Bo had no job, no money, and sponged off him by living in his trailer. He testified Bo would steal from him. He also claimed that on the night of October 22nd, 2005, the night Tara went missing, he and Bo drank beer and did shots of tequila. Duke said Bo woke up around 8 a.m. the next morning and told him he killed Grinstead. The 2 men were classmates at Irwin County High, where Grinstead taught. He later testified that Bo took him to the pecan orchard in Ben Hill County, which is interesting because this is Bo Duke's family farm. So the prosecution, they started poking holes in Duke's testimony, asking him why investigators found a glove with his and Grinstead's DNA on it in her front yard. The state also argued Duke's various stories contradicted each other. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Bo Dukes was also called in to testify, but he pleaded the fifth to avoid incriminating himself. Day 8. The day started with a hearing about whether to allow testimony about Bo Dukes. Jurors were not present for this hearing, and Judge Bill Reinhart ultimately ruled jurors would not hear the testimony once the trial resumed. In its rebuttal, the prosecution called Mitchell Posey, a GBI inspector and medical examiner, as an expert in the analysis of Duke's testimony. Duke's defense lawyers have argued he was under duress during the interview, that he was scared and under the influence of painkillers. Posey said that the agent interviewing Duke made mistakes while questioning him, but he still found the confession credible. Judge Reinhart, he questioned 2 jurors about falling asleep in the jury box during the afternoon's testimony. One of those jurors was dismissed. Day 9, each side presented its closing arguments. The defense emphasized these points to the jury. They believe it should be Bo Dukes on trial for Grinstead's murder. They said Duke confessed under duress, and they believe the quality of the physical evidence in the case is poor. Now, the prosecution stood ready to address these points in its statement. They pointed out repeatedly that Ryan Duke voluntarily confessed and replayed portions of his confession. They pointed out the physical evidence, including the glove containing Duke's DNA, and prosecutor Brad Rigby referred to the jurors as truth seekers in telling them to honor their oath. And so a little history of this case as we close this out. In 2005, evidence in the case dates back nearly 17 years to October 22nd, 2005, when the Ocilla teacher and beauty queen vanished. Her body was never found and no one was charged in the case, but law enforcement continued to chase numerous clues and tips. 2011, the Irwin County Sheriff said he got a tip telling him to search near a bridge on Reedy Creek. He says a dive team and deputies searched for more than 4 hours and found nothing. 4 years later, in 2015, law enforcement searched a pond in Ben Hill County but said they didn't find what they were looking for. Fall 2016, a true crime podcast is released, bringing renewed national attention to this case. That podcast, called Up and Vanish. If you dig into this story, good or bad, about this Up and Vanish podcast, it seems like that has led a lot of national attention to this case. February 22nd, 2017, GBI agents took Ryan Alexander Duke into custody. Duke was charged on 6 counts, including Grinstead's murder. February 28, 2017, GBI searched a Ben Hill County pecan farm for Grinstead's remains. At the time, agents did not say what they were looking for or what they found. It was later revealed during Bo Duke's trial that the GBI agents found human bone fragments at the orchard. March 2017, Bo Dukes was charged with helping conceal Grinstead's body. He and Ryan were high school classmates, and his uncle, Randy Hudson, owned the pecan farm where investigators were searching for Tara. December 2018, a leaked confession hit the internet outlining an alleged 2017 interview between Ryan and the GBI. As investigators worked to figure out who posted it, Ryan's accused accomplice, Bo, was ordered back to federal prison for charges in a separate case. But before turning himself in, he was charged with sexually assaulting 2 women in Houston County and he was considered armed and dangerous. He led authorities on a 4-day manhunt before being taken into custody at a relative's house in Irwin County. March 2019, Bo Duke's trial in Wilcox County ended in late March, and he was found guilty of concealing Tara Grinstead's death and lying to the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, GBI. He was sentenced to 25 years. April 2019, Ryan Duke's trial was supposed to start on April 1st in Irwin County, but at the last minute, the Georgia Supreme Court granted a delay after his defense filed an emergency motion. Between May and August of 2019, Ryan Duke and his lawyers would argue for the state to cover funds for an investigator for Ryan. This argument would bounce between Irwin County Superior Court and the state Supreme Court. September 2019, the prosecution and defense agreed to have Georgia Supreme Court hear the argument again after Irwin County Judge Reinhardt signs a certificate of immediate review. January 2020, an Irwin County judge ruled again that the state should not pay for private investigators and experts to help Ryan Duke prepare for his trial. January 2021, Supreme Court of Georgia says Duke would appeal in Irwin County's court denial of his request for state funds to pay for expert witnesses and an investigator. March 2021, the Georgia Supreme Court issued a decision reversing part of the ruling that would have kept Ryan Duke from using state funds to prepare for trial. August 2021, Ryan Duke's murder trial was scheduled to start October 4th in Irwin County, but lawyers in the case met with Judge Reinhardt and agreed to delay the case due to rising COVID-19 numbers. Early 2022, a trial date is set for May 2nd. Jury selection begins on that day with hundreds summoned. What has come out of that case? As we now know, Ryan Duke is acquitted on 5 of the 6 charges. Will we ever have justice for Tara Grinstead's death? Right now, not looking very positive. She deserves justice. I don't care how she was living her life, having an affair with the married cop. It's wrong. Should never lead to death. And that did not lead to death, right? She can do whatever she wants in her personal life. Don't take her life. She doesn't deserve this. 2 cowards did something wrong to her. 1 or 2 are lying. They're both lying. I don't even know. But I do know there's no justice for Tara. No one's being charged with her murder. One's acquitted for her murder. Another's in there for hiding the death of a person and lying and hiding. Whatever. What I can tell you is that we need justice for Tara, and I wish one of them would say it was this that happened. What we do know, for the most part, is what happened to her. It looks like it was more Bo Duke's, and if you look at his history, he was violent to women. But I don't know. Him pleading the 5th does not look good for him, and it ends up helping Ryan Duke's case. My friends, I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to serving you again. Peace. Have a great day, my friends.